Why? Hello. Welcome back to An Escape from Reality. I am Jack Brunót and I talk all things art and entertainment, and today, I am ranking all of the movies that I watched for the first time in 2024. These are not necessarily movies that came out in 2024. These are just movies I experienced for the first time this year. Don't take the list too seriously. This is just an excuse for me to talk about my favorite movies I watched this year. In fact, I would say I didn't hate any of the movies that are on this list. I'd like to think I've gotten pretty good at choosing which media that I consume. I've never been the type of person to go out of my way to watch something that I know I am not going to like, but I am proven wrong sometimes, so I try to get out of my comfort zone as much as possible. Regardless, I am by no means a film critic. I would just consider myself a movie appreciator. So if your favorite film is not at the top of this list, just know that I did not hate it, nor do I think it is bad. There just happens to be a lot of bangers on this list, and this unfortunately is my video. This is just my opinion. This list is going to be very biased based on what I like and don't. If we had the exact same opinions, that would be quite odd because we are in fact different people, from what I understand anyway. Now, I did not just make a list this year, I am also going to be giving some awards away to certain films on the list. Those award categories are cinema, writing, characters, soundtrack, story, acting, and ending. I would love to hear some of your favorites from your own personal lists and also from my list in the comments. But just remember, we all found this video for a reason. It's because we love films. So bullying each other's personal opinions and taste in the comments will make it impossible to have a productive discussion. It's also just very me. This is a spoiler-free video. Please try to refrain from putting spoilers about these films or really any other films in the comments. I, of course, have watched all of these films, but some of the other viewers may not have. So, getting into the list, I have 20 films that we're going to be talking about today. I know that may not seem like a lot to people who are really into films, but I was way more prioritized with the other mediums that I cover, like music, books, and video games. I am also making lists for those as well, so if you're interested in that, go check them out on my channel. I do also have one more thing I want to quickly touch on: Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had the wonderful and chaotic opportunity to see it in theaters, in which the audience was participating in the movie. I am not going to be ranking it in this list because I kind of almost didn't actually get to watch the movie. The crowd was so loud the entire time that I only heard some of the dialogue. If you are unaware of the cultural phenomenon that this movie is, it is a classic horror movie that somehow got a reputation of having the audience participate within the movie. I should really do some research as to how this happened, but basically, if you go to the movie in person, there's going to be props that you have to use during the movie. There's often a costume contest beforehand. Me and my significant other also dressed up. Maybe I'll put some pictures up on screen, who knows. And then there's also audience participation, like yelling at certain things during the movie. That might sound really annoying to the average film bro, but I can assure you it was a lot of fun. But it does make it kind of impossible for me to rank the movie, as I kind of somewhat didn't watch the movie. I kind of wish I watched it before going to see it in person. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that briefly. Let's get into the actual list, starting at number 19, which is Moon. As I said at the beginning of this video, I don't hate any of the movies on this list, and I don't hate Moon either, but this movie committed one of the most heinous crimes that really any movie, game, whatever can commit. It bored the living hell out of me. No offense to anyone who likes this movie, I do see the appeal, and it is the type of film that is right up my alley, which is quite unfortunate that it didn't hit for me. I would much rather watch a terrible movie as opposed to a boring movie. To talk about the plot would somewhat spoil the movie, but to give you an idea, there is this guy living on a space station on the moon. After being there for 3 years, he only has 3 weeks left on his job site. At the end of his 3 weeks, he gets to return home to Earth. That is until he has an accident and discovers that he is not alone. It's a very cool concept and it is critically acclaimed, so I understand if you might have a problem with my opinion. The opinion of some random guy on the internet does not have to hurt your love for a movie, and frankly, I'm happy for you that you enjoyed it more than I did. Next, we have 28 Days Later. I had a pretty good movie year in 2024 because this is not a bad movie, and it also did not bore me like Moon did. I just frankly didn't like it as much as some of the others on this list. This happens to be a zombie movie, which is very much not my genre. There are certain zombie properties that I love, for example, The Last of Us and The Walking Dead, both the games and the TV show. But because of all of that, I've kind of gotten zombied out. I was hoping that 28 Days Later would bring something new to the genre, and I would say that it did, kind of. This came out really before the zombie renaissance in pop culture, so it did divert my expectations fairly well. I was also surprised to see Cillian Murphy as the lead in here. So yeah, I mean, if you like the zombie thing and you are not tired of it, you should definitely watch this. I'm just kind of over it at this point. I need like a 10 or 20 year break from this genre. Next, we have a horror movie that took the world by storm in 2024, Longlegs. This film made me very conflicted because I really love it and really hate it all at the same time. I think the acting and the cinematography is absolutely wonderful here. The plot was also quite intriguing until it kind of lost its lust at the very end. In fact, that's the reason it's so low on the list. I would have put it much higher if it stuck the landing at the end. That is going to be a common theme with the horror movies on this list. It's almost like, with many horror films, for me at least, it's almost like you're flipping a coin, like 50% of the time you're gonna get a good ending and 50% of the time you're not. I try my best not to let the ending ruin it for me, but here it just didn't work. The lead actress, Micah Monroe, who is also another lead in one of my favorite horror movies, It Follows, is the absolute star in this film. I found her character to be so interesting, much more interesting than a lot of other characters that we see in many horror films these days. And Nicolas Cage as Longlegs was absolutely petrifying. This is a pretty typical serial killer movie in which our main character is an FBI agent who has a knack for hunting down criminals. My issue is with the latter half of the film, and this is kind of a spoiler, kind of not. If it bothers you and you want to watch this movie and go in completely blind, I suggest you just skip ahead in this video. But basically at the end, we find out that there's some supernatural elements going on, and frankly, it kind of just comes out of the blue and did not feel natural to me. The majority of the film was very based in reality, and it also seemed like a lot of the promotion for the film was as well. So in my opinion, the ending kind of felt like a cop-out. However, I have the first award of the video to give away to Longlegs, which is the Cinematography Award. This is one of very few films on the list that I saw in theaters, and that was definitely the best way to watch this. I got the opportunity to watch it in an old classic movie theater, and the toneful colors and suspense of this film fit perfectly. I honestly might not have ever seen such a beautifully, hauntingly shot film before. I almost gave the acting award to this movie as well, but the cinematography award just fits way too perfect. And that's why it hurts me so much to put it this low on the list. I know a lot of people are going to be mad about this next entry being this low, but at number 16, I have The Killing of a Sacred Deer. A lot of my compliments for Longlegs can also be said here. The cinematography is so hauntingly beautiful. The suspense of this movie is just brutal. I am never going to be able to get the image of Barry Keoghan eating spaghetti out of my head. In fact, I think this is probably Barry Keoghan's best role. He never ceases to amaze me on how unsettlingly creepy he can act. Colin Farrell and the rest of the cast also did a phenomenal job, and that is actually the reason I'm going to be giving the acting award to this film. The acting was so good here that it pains me to put it this low on the list once again for the ending. You see, basically at the beginning of the movie, we are told exactly what is going to happen. And most films would then take that and divert expectations and have something unexpected happen. And I was expecting for something unexpected to happen, which I guess is kind of suspected. So I guess you could say my criticism here is invalid. But the thing is, as I said, beginning of the movie tells you what's going to happen, and then that's what happens. They nailed the suspense really well here because it makes you think that something else is going to happen, but unfortunately, what they told you was going to happen happens. And I'm sorry, but it bothered me. It really pains me to say this because I feel like this movie could have been a top of the list contender. I'm sorry, I got carried away about how passionate I am about this. I completely forgot to tell you what the plot even is. The film follows Dr. Stephen Murphy, played by Colin Farrell, who is a renowned cardiovascular surgeon. However, he unfortunately makes a mistake on the table which costs a family man his life. Dr. Murphy feels so bad that he then somewhat becomes a surrogate father for this man's son. However, the son, played by Barry Keoghan, doesn't exactly appreciate it. Anything else I tell you about it will be a spoiler. Despite the fluke at the ending, I do suggest anyone watch this film. Maybe your opinion will be different, and I would love to hear your opinion in the comments about it. It had so much potential and it just kind of squandered it at the end. Next, we have a Jordan Peele and Dev Patel film, Monkey Man. I really don't want to boil this film down, but it really is just the Indian John Wick, and it truly is a fantastic action movie, but I do have some issues with the plot. As I said, the action scenes are absolutely phenomenal here, easily the best part of the movie. But it felt like there was a lot of filler, specifically in the middle section of the movie, and while I don't think they should have necessarily cut all of this filler, I think they could have used the space a little bit more productively. The film does a fantastic job opening up and introducing us to our main character, and I did feel a deep connection to him. I did not notice this until the end when I saw him beating the hell out of all of these guys. I actually think my connection to the main character was a little bit more strong here than even in the first John Wick, which, side note, by the way, is one of my favorite films of all time, so that is a compliment. But that's not to say the ending is perfect. Now, the immediate ending was okay. It was pretty solid. I just think there was a direction of a certain character arc or like group of character arcs that didn't feel justified at the end, and I wish I could touch on it a little bit more, but I don't want to spoil it. I did like the political concepts here though. There was a heavy influence on the distrust of religion and politicians here that I think is very important to look at, not just in India, but also the world as a whole. I will continue to watch anything that Dev Patel is in and anything that Jordan Peele directs. They are both very talented individuals in the film industry, so I hope they keep at it, and I do suggest you check this out, especially if you like John Wick or just in general action movies. For my number 14 spot, I need to remind everyone that I do not hate these films. I don't think they're bad. I know this film has a huge fan base and it is considered to be a classic, and I did not hate it, remember, but we're going to be talking about Taxi Driver. I think this is a very important film, and most elements that I look for in a quality film are here. Really, my only criticism, which you could say is not a criticism, but it's the reason it's this low on the list, is the fact that I was a little bored watching it. Not much happens until the end. The buildup is very solid, though. The film follows an unstable Vietnam War veteran who becomes a taxi driver in New York. Over the course of the film, we see this guy become more and more unstable as he deals with the current state of the world. If you have ever seen Joker, Taxi Driver is very similar, except it feels a lot more rooted in reality. This is not a criticism of Joker. I also really enjoyed that film. But what is scary about Taxi Driver as opposed to Joker is Joker doesn't entirely feel like someone you're just gonna meet out on the street. Arthur Fleck in that film is a very heightened version of mental instability. However, in Taxi Driver, Travis very much seems like a guy that you could just meet walking down the street. And frankly, that is just quite terrifying. What's even more terrifying is how relatable the main character can be to a lot of men. I by no means condone what Travis does in this film, nor do I 100% relate to him, but I did see some of myself in Travis, even just a little bit. Please don't take that as a red flag. I can step back and look at this from a full picture standpoint. Taxi Driver is all about men's mental health in a broken society, something that I think we have all run into if you have even spent 1 minute on the internet. I found this film to be so sad, not because of what it presented, but what it says about society. And as I said, I don't hate it. I totally understand this film. I get the point that it's trying to get across, but it doesn't change the fact that it did bore me. Next, we are talking about another Dev Patel film, what you could consider to be his breakout role in Slum Dog Millionaire. We are at that point in the list where it's a little hard to talk about the films because I just don't have a super strong opinion. Slum Dog Millionaire is a coming of age movie about a kid living in extreme poverty within India. Because of the vast amount of experiences that he had growing up, he got lucky enough to go onto a game show that will allow him to become a millionaire millionaire if he wins. The movie goes back and forth between him answering questions and then also seeing how he even knew the answer to the questions as he's growing up in India. What I was not expecting was this to kind of be a romance movie. Definitely a very different romance movie, to say the least. I think all around this movie was really solid. Is it the greatest thing to ever exist? No, but I do think it was entertaining, and it also managed to touch on some very important topics. I also don't have a problem with the ending, but I do have a better idea for how the ending could have gone that would have been a little bit more interesting to me. If you are interested in hearing about my opinion, let me know, and I could certainly make another video on it. But for now, we are going to continue with my list with number 12, which is Late Night with the Devil. I'm so excited to be seeing David Dismulchen get recognition for this role. He has had so many fantastic performances over the years that I've seen, and his talent indeed continues over here with Late Night with the Devil. The entire film is shot like a late night talk show. However, it happens to be the final showing of this fictional late night talk show in which something goes wrong and supernatural hijinks ensue. I absolutely love the ideas this film proposes. It is very much an unconventional horror film. I've never really seen anything quite like it before. My favorite aspect of horror movies is the immense amount of tension leading up to something that happens, or perhaps leading up to something that does not happen. My issue is when the tension does lead up to something that is just way too revealing, and once again, the ending of this film is a problem for me. I don't know what else they could have done, but the ending almost felt a little goofy to me. I've always said that my favorite genre of horror is cosmic horror, and the best cosmic horror toes the line between showing too much and not revealing anything at all at the end. So this could just be my personal taste, but I feel like there was just too much revealed at the end. At number 11, we have Foxcatcher. This happens to be a true story of two Olympic wrestlers and one absolutely appalling billionaire. This story is just so sad, and I don't want to disrespect the real life victims here, so I don't want to harp on all of the other things that I usually would, but I can just say that we are at the point in the list where pretty much everything is solid from a movie standpoint. I was not aware of this story before watching the movie, and I would suggest if you are going to watch Foxcatcher to not look into it. It's frankly hard to believe that this is even a true story. I don't even know what to say. It's just really sad. Okay, moving on, cracking the top 10 movies that I watched in 2024. At number 10, we have The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which, if you are unaware, is the prequel story to the Hunger Games trilogy. As I talked about in my book list this year, which if you're curious, go check it out. This is very much a guilty pleasure for me. I've been a long-time Hunger Games fan, and I do think that this added on to the lore quite well. Do I think that this movie can stand alone by itself without the original trilogy? No, I don't, but as a fan, that did not ruin my experience. If you have watched this movie and have not watched the original trilogy, I would love to know your thoughts. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes unfolds almost like a Shakespearean play. What I found shocking was there was a lot less action here. The 10th Hunger Games does take place, but it's only a fraction of the movie, and it's not even the end of the movie, unlike the original trilogy. I also found it kind of surprising that there were differentiations between the book and the movie. And while, yeah, I mean, that shouldn't be surprising, that makes sense, but we know that Suzanne Collins wrote the book knowing that it was going to be turned into a movie shortly after. In fact, the two were made at the same time. And I mean, to no surprise, I am a fan of the book more than I am the movie. If you are a fan of the Hunger Games and you think this is a cash grab, just know I didn't feel like it was. I really enjoyed it, but do not expect the same old, same old. I think they took a really big risk of trying something new here, especially following the main antagonist from the original trilogy, but I think they stuck the landing really well. At number 9, we have another true story and another wrestling film, The Iron Claw. Now, unlike Foxcatcher, this movie is about fake wrestling, and I was really not expecting to like it as much as I did. I am not a fan of WWE. No offense to people who are, I don't get it. We all know it's fake, but at the heart of the Iron Claw, that is not what this movie really is about at all. This movie touches on what it means to be a man, specifically unpacking toxic masculinity. As I said, it is a true story, and it is once again quite sad. In fact, what happened in the real life event is even more sad than the movie depicts. Despite this, I do think the ending is quite hopeful, which was very needed. If you noticed, I didn't really talk about the plot with this film or Foxcatcher, and that's because the plot is someone's real life that they went through. For me, it just doesn't feel right to really do a deep dive of explaining what goes on. I suggest that you just go check it out. There are some fantastic performances here, among them being Zac Efron and Jeremy White. Year after year, Zac Efron is proving himself to be a formidable actor. Even though Zac Efron's character is the main character, he almost isn't the person who's really being followed. He very much felt like a non-character, which would typically be a criticism of mine, but I think worked beautifully here. At number 8, we have Barbie. When I was putting this list together, I don't typically pay attention to the directors of films. If there was ever a red flag for me not being a film bro, that's it. However, I did some research when I was making the infographics for this video, and I came to find out that unfortunately, this is the only movie on the list that was directed by a woman. Now, I knew that this was a male-dominated industry, but I think the fact that me not paying attention to directors and then finding out that there was only one on this list that was directed by a woman really put it into perspective for me. And the reason that I'm talking about this is because that's the whole entire point of this movie. I'm going to try and make it a point to watch more films that were directed by women in 2025. Don't get me wrong, I'm not just going to watch a movie because it was directed by a woman. However, I think just going forward, I'm going to pay a little bit more close attention at who directed the films that I'm watching. Of course, no shade to all of the male directors on this list either. Barbie really surprised me with what it brought to the table here. I did not know what it was about going into it. What I thought would feel like a Disney movie turned into a very thoughtful discussion on how women are treated in society. I've seen a lot of criticism about this film, and don't get me wrong, if you don't like the movie because, I don't know, you don't like the cinematography, or you don't like the acting, or you don't like the lighting, or whatever, it's understandable. I'm not saying that you are sexist for not liking this movie, but if you are the type of person who has a genuine problem with the subject matter that is discussed in this movie and how they tackle it, you are either one of two kinds of people. You either just did not understand the point of the movie, or you're one of those people. And to both of those, I say, please try to put yourself in the shoes of women, your mothers, your sisters, your daughters, etc., and understand that yes, men do have it hard in certain ways in society, but guess what? So do women. And many of the struggles that women deal with in society are vastly systematic and downright dangerous. You can call me a pick-me, you can call me a simp, I don't care. I am not going to stand for bigotry. I think Barbie nailed its plot, and frankly, the fact that it's a movie about a girl's toy is mind-boggling to me that they nailed it so well. So as I said, if you don't like the film, it's fine. Just be a good person. It's free. At number 7, we have John Carpenter's The Thing. This is now probably my favorite classic horror movie. I'm not the biggest fan of slasher films, and a lot of classic horror movies fall into that genre. This is more of a cosmic horror monster flick. The Thing takes place in an Antarctic research facility when a shape-shifting creature starts picking off the staff. Finally, a horror movie with an ending that I can get behind. It's meant to be left ambiguous. Behind every turn throughout the story, you don't exactly know what's going to happen. The cinematography shockingly holds up very well with its realistic props and animatronics. Spectacular work. At number 6, we have our final horror movie on this list, Lake Mongo. This movie has been making the rounds on the film side of YouTube lately, and I was fully expecting to not like it, and I also didn't think it was going to stick the landing at the end, but both of those things were untrue. Lake Mungo is shot like a documentary, but don't worry, it is not a true story, or so they tell us. I think it's important to also note that I am frankly not a fan of supernatural and paranormal horror movies, but that is what this is, and it hits. It hits. A 16-year-old teenager drowns in a nearby lake, and the movie follows the family and friends of this girl, trying to uncover the truth about her death and also experiencing paranormal occurrences. On face value, it seems like a typical run-of-the-mill paranormal movie, but there are a couple of fantastic unexpected twists that shake things up really well but do not set it off course. There is also this iconic scene in the film near the end that actually showed up in a nightmare the night after I watched it. I do not typically get scared from horror movies, but something about Lake Mungo just kind of cut deep, and I didn't even realize it until afterwards. I wasn't necessarily scared during the movie, but the themes that it touches on, even outside of the paranormal, is something that I think we can all relate to. Just the fact that we are all going to die one day. I am going to be giving the writing award to this thing. Lake Mungo truly felt like a real documentary. Like, if you told me it was real, I would have believed you. And I do not believe in ghosts, or at least how ghosts are depicted in media. But even with that element present here, it truly feels like a real documentary. We are now cracking my top 5, and at number 5, we are talking about The Social Network. This is one of 3 David Fincher films in my top 5. Listen, I like the guy, okay? Jesus. Frankly, I'm quite shocked I put this movie this high. I would consider to be a very boring topic and made it quite entertaining. Now, believe it or not, I did not know what this movie was about going into it, but apparently it is a true story about Mark Zuckerberg making Facebook. Once I had started watching this film and learned that's what it was about, I was very worried that they were going to glorify Mark Zuckerberg, but they definitely did not do that. I also wouldn't say that they vilified him either. They kind of towed this very fine line of making him not likable and likable at the same time, possibly to avoid a lawsuit, I don't know. While Mark Zuckerberg, who is played by Jesse Eisenhower, is technically the main character, his partner, who is played by Andrew Garfield, is more of the general focus of the film. And I think that is what made it the most tolerable to me. I don't even quite understand why I like this, so trying to help you understand why you should watch it is a little difficult, but trust me, it's a lot more entertaining than it sounds. Now, obviously, we know that he ends up creating Facebook and supposedly he's doing quite well now, but I really liked the ending in which he wins and gets the Facebook name, but he also loses essentially everything else he cares about in the end. I don't entirely know how true this film is, but the other characters are real people, so I'll just assume it's 100% true. Everything you see on the internet is indeed true. All right, now we're cracking the top 4 and we are getting into banger territory, like absolute banger. So good. These next 4 films are some of my favorites ever. At number 4, we are talking about my first and currently only Studio Ghibli film, Spirited Away. I do plan on watching some more of their films. I also really need to start leaning into some anime films as well. I have a couple that I want to check out for next year. But I mean, this was the quintessential starting point. I absolutely love the art style here. It is so beautiful. And if I had more animated films on this list, I might have made an animation award. Let's just pretend that there is an animation award. I know this is my video. I could do whatever I want, but animation award will go to this. Spirited Away is about a young girl who gets trapped in the spirit world. She has to figure out how to turn her parents back to humans and escape back to her reality. This is not me saying that they should make this into a TV show. Please do not do that because I know that would cheapen the story, but I would definitely watch a full television series of this movie. The character writing almost felt like that. All of the characters were so memorable and had their own individual plot arcs. That is why I am giving it the Characters Award. Frankly, this movie could have been an extra 1 to 2 hours and I would have been cool with it. There is a twist at the end, which, in my opinion, I do think there could have been a better way to reveal the twist, or at least tie it back to the beginning of the film. But you know, I'm not gonna talk about it here. Let me know what Studio Ghibli film I should watch next. I've been thinking about having like a full week where I watch one per night. Maybe my next year list will be packed with their movies. I would not really have a problem with that. Next, we have Fight Club, another David Fincher film. Gee, I would love to talk more about this, but I'm not allowed to. Anyway, this is the most fast-paced movie on the list. You can clearly see that at the very beginning where our main character is narrating what's going on.
And I mean, he is speaking a mile a minute.
Fight Club very much stands the test of time. And it was quite surprising to see how many other films and TV shows that it inspired. In fact, if you are a fan of the television series Mr. Robot, which happens to be one of my favorites, you have to go watch Fight Club. They are very similar, not in tonality. I would say Fight Club is a lot more upbeat and less depressing, but many of the twists and plot devices are very similar. I cannot stress how just absolutely wild this is. Fight Club follows two men, one an insomniac and another a soap salesman, as they create an illegal underground fight club as a new form of therapy. Eventually, the idea catches on and they essentially create an army. Fight Club is not just a fun and upbeat film, it covers a handful of important topics. Many of the themes of Taxi Driver can also be reflected here. There is a heightened conversation on the rejection of consumerism, a search for true authenticity, and the dangers of extremism and toxic masculinity. And for all of that, I am going to be giving it the Story Award. Story and writing are different. While story focuses more on the overarching plot, writing is more concerned with individual interactions within the story. That's not to say that the writing of Fight Club is bad. I just think the Story Award fits it even better. Now, at our number 2 spot, we have another David Fincher film, the final one, I swear. We have Gone Girl. They made an entire movie about that one SZA song. In this film, we see Amy Dunn, a former childhood actor and happily married woman, mysteriously go missing. All of the evidence points towards her husband, Nick Dunn, being the culprit. In fact, there's a shocking amount of evidence that points towards Nick Dunn being the person who made his wife disappear. Now, the twist that comes about halfway through this film is very easy to see coming, but the overall plot is so well written and unfolds beautifully. Gone Girl was a true nail-biter of a film, and the ending, I'm not even kidding, the ending made me want to throw up. I genuinely felt physically ill. I have a friend who saw this movie in theaters when it first came out, and supposedly once the credits rolled, the movie theater was dead silent. My literal jaw dropped. I sat there staring at the screen as the credits rolled. I don't want to overhype it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but seriously. Yeah, so I'm going to give it the ending award. It's kind of obvious. This is a perfect example of diverting expectations and doing it well. Anyway, moving on from that trauma, let's talk about my favorite movie that I watched in 2024, which happens to be Whiplash. I'm just going to say it off the bat. This is getting the final award of the video, which is the soundtrack award. I mean, that is kind of the entire point. This is, after all, a movie about jazz. Whiplash follows a college student who is aspiring to be one of the greats in jazz drumming. When he is taken under the wing of his very strict jazz instructor, his pursuit of excellence starts consuming his entire reality. This film is perfect in every way. The cinematography, its warm and cozy cinematography, is the perfect counterbalance to the tension and abuse that the students of Terrence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, undergo. Whiplash particularly hit home for me. As someone who is a musician, however, I've kind of been leaning more and more into the former musician title. I used to let music and my strive for greatness really consume everything about my life. While I wouldn't say it completely ruins my life, it definitely set me back from the goals that I have set for myself in my current life. And seeing this talented young drummer just absolutely ruin every single relationship in his life just because he wants to be successful almost felt like watching myself on screen. Now, I did not have like this crazy instructor that was ruling over me, but I almost feel like Fletcher feels like an embodiment of our own selves, criticizing the work that we are doing and telling us that it's just not good enough and we have to keep trying harder and harder and harder until it's just too much. And also, this isn't really a spoiler, but in the ending, Terrence Fletcher, the instructor, he ends up being right. The fact that it takes so much self-abuse to be successful in certain art forms. I could even say that for YouTube. It's just quite unfortunate. I think the world of rock and roll is a perfect example. We've seen so many rock stars get addicted to drugs because they're just putting in so many hours and there's no other way to cope. Yet they got in with good intentions because they wanted to be famous musicians, and many of them had the talent to do so. And we look at all of these artists who overdosed on drugs, or maybe they committed suicide, and we look at these people as some of the greats in the industry. And you gotta think, these people went down in history as legends, but what they had to do to put themselves at that pedestal ruined their lives. So is this pursuit of greatness worth it for you? I don't think there's a great answer. I'm still searching for that answer in my own life as someone who works very hard on their art forms, whether it be making videos, writing, making music. But I think Whiplash shined a bright light on it for me. And I have, even before watching this movie, been trying to focus more on my mental health. And will that stunt my greatness? Who knows, but hopefully I'll just have a more satisfying life out of it. If you can't tell, Whiplash was my favorite film by a very large margin. I would recommend anyone watch it, even if you're not the biggest fan of music or a big fan of jazz. I think it has a very important message that people around the world can relate to, especially in the United States, a country that puts success above everything else. So of course, that is my biggest recommendation for you in this video. And that is it. That was me ranking all of the movies that I watched for the very first time in 2024. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching it in its entirety. I post 2 videos a month, so if you liked this, you might like one of the others. And before I wave you a goodbye, just remember, don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't do with your life. Stay safe out there. Boo-bye.